Namaskaram, friends. We start with a small prayer. அல்லல்போம் வல்வினைபோம் அன்னை வயிற்றில் பிறந்த தொல்லைபோம் போகா துயரும்போம் நல்ல குணமதிகமாம் அருணை கோபுரத்தில் வீற்றிருக்கும் கணபதியை கைத்தொழுதக்கால் உருவாய் அருவாய் உளதாய் இலதாய் மறுவாய் மலராய் மணியாய் ஒளியாய் கருவாய் உயிராய் கதியாய் விதியாய் குருவாய் வருவாய் அருள்வாய் குகனே. गुरुर् ब्रह्मा गुरुर् विष्णु गुरुदेवो महेश्वर गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्मं तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. ज्ञानानन्दमयं देवं निर्मल स्फटिकाकृतम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां श्रेयग्रीवोपास्महे. சுருட்பிரகாசவல்லலா திவ்ய திருவடிகளே சரணம். வள்ளல் மலரடி வாழ்க வாழ்க, எல்லா உயிர்களும் இன்புற்று வாழ்க. அருட்பெரும் ஜோதி அருட்பெரும் ஜோதி, தனிப்பெரும் கருணை அருட்பெரும் ஜோதி. ஞானத்தால் தொழுவார் உனை ஞானிகள், ஞானத்தால் தொழுவார் உனை நாணலேன், ஞானத்தால் தொழுவார் தொழுகண்டு, ஞானத்தாய் உனை ஞானம் தொழுவனே. ஓம் நமோ நாராயணா. ஓம் நம சிவாய. Good morning, friends. Today is an auspicious day. It's Tamil New Year Day, starting from today. And today is also Maha Aradhana Day of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharishi. So on this sacred auspicious day, I would like to start the next session on the Samkhya darśana. So with this introduction, I just wanted to get on to the actual presentation. Thank you. I'm trying to share my screen. I hope you are able to see the screen. So we are going to discuss today the Samkhya darśana. As part of the larger series of discussions. We already started discussing on the Samkhya darśana. We had 3 topics covered. So we started with the introduction. So I would just wanted to brief on the earlier video sessions that we discussed, so that you are able to recollect and follow the overall series of the thought process. Okay. So again, to start with some prayers. சிவன் அவன் என் சிந்தையில் நின்ற அதனால் அவன் அருளாலே அவன் தாள் வணங்கி சிந்தை மகிழ சிவபுராணம் தன்னை முந்தை வினை முழுதும் ஓயவரைப்பேன் ஞான். அசதோமா சத்கமய தமசோமா ஜோதிர்கமய மிருத்யோர்மா அமிர்தங்கமய. ஓம் சாந்தி சாந்தி சாந்தி. So we started with a general perspective on what is religion. So basically the Samkhya. And then we moved on to the śāstradarśīka. What do we mean by scriptures? So this Samkhya and the śāstradarśīka is more of generic across what is religion, cutting across various religious definitions, Indian and Abrahamic, etc. So in Indian we saw the different religions and the different faiths around it. Similarly the other religions. So we got a larger context of what is religion. And then similarly, a larger context of what is scripture. So, what do you mean by scriptures according to various religions, and how there is avatarana or a revelation of the scriptures uh, from a divine source through the rishis, the rishi munis, and the acharyas, and finally reaches the seekers like you and me. So we saw that. So there are corresponding videos there on all these topics. So we started discussing on the generic introduction to philosophy in terms of what is philosophy, the different branches of philosophy, the major classifications of philosophy, uh, including its geographical classification, and then we moved on to the historical timeline of the philosophical thought, and then provided an infographic mind map, and then the different ways of classification, the alternate ways of classification of India of philosophy in general. Okay, so that is the part of this first session we had, and then we moved on to discussing specifics on um, Indian philosophies. With Indian philosophies, we discussed uh, about what are the native traditions of India and the philosophical traditions of Hinduism, the Vaidika philosophies, and the Sāṅkhya philosophy. Basically, the how the Indian philosophies are classified when we're talking about the branches of philosophy. Okay, so and then we moved on specifically deep dive sessions into Indian philosophies, and particularly through the Shad Darshanas, Shad Astika Darshanas, uh, and in which the one of the oldest philosophies is the Sankhya philosophy. So this series that is on Sankhya philosophy. We already covered its Guru Parampara, the lineage of how the descent avatarana of that wisdom flowed down, as I talked, from the divine source through the rishis to and the acharyas to us. And then we also talked about the historical perspective of this flow. Okay, and then we moved on to what are the important scriptural texts that are available through history. Um, yeah, okay, so cutting across references in the Vedas, the core Vedic corpus, and then specific Prakarana Granthas focused on the Sāṅkhya treatise. Okay, so so far we have covered all these topics. We now move on to the next level of topics. So these are the things we covered in the last session. Sorry, it is interesting. So today we are going to focus on the next three important topics relating to Sāṅkhya darśana. So with the previous understanding on the historical context, the Guru Parampara, as well as the scriptural corpus available in Sankhya, we move on to understanding the specifics of the uh, specific concepts and terms with Sankhya darśana. So we will start with the core etymologies, starting with the etymology of Sankhya itself. What does Sankhya mean, and why is this darśana called Sankhya? And we also would like to understand the two major ontological categories. Uh, Sankhya darshana is basically a dualistic realism. Where there are two major padarthas or categories or tattvas. So one is the puruṣa tattva and another is the prakrti tattva. So we would like to understand both these concepts, starting with their etymological significance and eventually to the metaphysical aspects of the same. Okay, so this is the context of today's session. So we now would jump into the actual session. So this is the overall agenda for today. So as I said, we will be talking about the understanding of the etymology of the terms of Sāṃkhya, then characteristics of the puruṣa and the prakrti today. The other sessions we will be taking up in the subsequent sessions. Okay. As I said, Sāṃkhya philosophy can logically be classified under a dualistic ontology. So which means that there are two basic entities. One is called as the puruṣa and the other is the prakrti. We already touched upon that. Okay, so Sāṃkhya in that sense is related to an ontological philosophy. So and enumeration of these ontologies. So that is the basically like the basic building blocks of the standard um, physics, right? So we have the standard theory of physics where we have the basic building blocks of what constitutes the physical nature. Similarly, we have the periodic table in chemistry where we identify the basic elements that constitute the chemical aspect of nature. Similarly, here Samkhya is one of the oldest ontological theories which enumerates the basic building blocks. So Samkhya is based on Saṅkhyana. Etymologically, is derived based on Saṅkhyana as one of the derivations, or Parikyana, which means enumeration or calculations. As I said, here we are trying to break down the entire cosmic manifestation or the um, empirical realm into its basic building blocks. So the manifestation of this world into its basic building blocks, which are enumerated as 25 core principles. So it's just this kind of enumeration that is what is one of the meanings of the term Saṅkhyana from its etymology. The other parallel or alternative way of looking at it is that it is a concept of reflection, which is based on derived from Samkhya, which means a reflection or a deliberation. So it is basically deliberation on the ontological realism. So on the ontological realities are the basic building blocks. So this is how scholars try to etymologically derive the term Sāṃkhya when it comes to Sāṃkhya darśana. So on the right side are some of the modern scholars or experts on this field who have come with these derivations based on their research. So we have both both schools of thought where some of the scholars derive it as I said, as a enumeration or calculation based on the term Saṅkhyana, and there is the other set of scholars or panditas who derive it based on the concept of a declaration, or I mean, a deliberation or a reflection. So both these terms are correlated. So they are not standalone islands, but they actually complement and supplement each other. So that's how we would like to we should take it. So let us deep dive a little more on that. So the word Samkhya is in Sanskrit is, according to scholars, derived from Sam, which is means perfect, and Kya. So Sanskrit, in the language called Sanskrit, is also mean, which is the Devanagari, which is considered as a perfect script. So Sam means perfect. So like this, Samkhya, kya means enumeration, or kya also means deliberation or declaration or enumeration. So when you say Samkhya, you actually mean a perfect enumeration or a declaration. So on what basis this derivation has come? What are the testimonies from the scripture? We have Matsya Purana suggesting this. The word Sankhya is derived from the word Samkhya. The system is so called because here numbers are enumerated. So that is what the Matsya Purana says. And then we have the Mahabharata, which says the Sankhyas are uh, indeed propound and also declare primordial nature, prakriti. And having truly enumerated the 24 categories of, as I said, it enumerates the ontological categories, the 24 categories. And for the Sankhya, however, the 25th together with the primordial nature. So the 25th is considered to be the puruṣa, or the soul, or the spirit, in terms of the Western corresponding terms. So these 25 entities are what is enumerated in Samkhya, and so this is one more reference from the Mahabharata for the term Sankhya darśana. So this darśana is focused on this enumeration of the ontological entities into 25 core principles, of 24 of which 24 are prakrti, and the 25th is the puruṣa, prakrti. I mean, from a bottom-up perspective. We'll deep dive in the subsequent sessions on all these concepts. So let us see what are the modern scholarship says about it. So we saw the earlier slides that there are multiple scholars who endorse to both these interpretations of the etymology of Sanskrit, of Sankhya. So now we'll take two references. One, Sarvapalli Dr. Radhakrishnan. He says the system takes its name from the fact that it arrives at and its end by means of theoretical analysis, and the name is defensible as being suitable to a system which gives a logical enumeration of the principles of the cosmos. So it is an ontological enumeration, so very logically rendered or logically classified. Again, to quote Dr. Radhakrishnan. However, this predisposition to enumeration is universal to all Hindu systems of thought. This is a very, very important point which we already observed as part of the earlier sessions, where Sāṅkhya darśana is considered to be one of the oldest philosophies or formal schools of Indian philosophy, and whose influence is cutting across all the other darshanas in one way or the other. So we will when we deep dive, we'll see what level of synergies are there between Sankhya and other schools. But the fact remains that most of the schools, not only the Vedantic schools, but within Hinduism, but also the Siddhantic or the Agamantic schools have a huge influence on, from Sankhya. Similarly, the Buddhism and Jainism also have their own influences from Sankhya, and these influences are always two-way. There is influence exchange between them. So between Vedanta and Sankhya and Vedanta at later stages, where each of these schools flourished and matured into their own independent thoughts. There are always knowledge handshakes between them. So the second reference I wanted to quote on the from the scholars are from Henry Colebrook, who says that a system of philosophy in which precision of reckoning is observed in the enumeration of its principles. So this again talks about its enumeration, the Sankhya enumeration of its ontological principles. And he continues, this principle is demonstrated Sankhya, a term which has been understood to signify numerical number, agreeably to the usual acceptation of Sankhya, and hence its analogy to the Pythagorean philosophy has been presumed. So here he tries to compare it with the Greek philosophy of Pythagoras, the ancient Greek philosophy. We will see how the energy of knowledge exchange in those days were there between India and Greece. So where the Samkhya philosophy had a huge impact on Greek philosophy. So we will see that. But that is what is referred here by this scholar here. And he continues to quote him, but the name may be taken to imply that it's a doctrine is founded in the exercise of judgment. So it is not just a pure enumeration, but it also has intellectual flavor to it, or it is highly philosophical in providing the exercise of judgment, for the word from which it is derived signifies reasoning or deliberation. So there is a lot of logic behind categorizing these 25 principles or the foundational building blocks of nature. So that is what is highlighted here. So there is a lot of reasoning or deliberation, and that interpretation of its import is countenanced by a passage of the Bharata, where it is said of the sect of philosophers, they exercise judgment, Sāṃkhya, and discuss nature and other 24 principles, and therefore are called Sāṃkhya. This is one more articulation on how Sāṃkhya is both not merely an enumeration, but it is also deliberation and a highly reasoned out philosophy, which stands the test of time even till today. Moving on, we look at the second etymological reference. So where Sāṃkhya means perfect and Sam means perfect, and Kya to declare or to state. So there we saw Sāṃkhya as how from enumeration philosophy. Here we are seeing it as a perfect deliberation philosophy. So what are the sources, the Indic sources of this etymological derivation? Amarakosha is one of the most famous reference points for all etymological understanding. So Amarakosha talks about the deliberation and reckoning inquiry. So like Sarcha, Sankhya, and Vicharana they're all referring to a same context or meaning. Okay. Then there is one more reference with one of the core text monographs of Samkhya itself. Basically, it is a bhashya by Vijnana Bhikshu. So on the Samkhya Pravachana Sutra, we saw that Samkhya Pravachana Sutra is one of the prakarana granthas of Samkhya darśana. So the Samkhya Pravachana Sutra has a very important bhashya written by Vijnana Bhikshu, where he says that by proper discrimination, it is an exposition of the self. That is the meaning. So he basically says Samkhya, how it enumerates and then it deliberates on how there is a difference between the puruṣa tattva and the prakrti tattva, between the spirit or the soul principle and the material or nature principle. And so this discriminative wisdom of this duality, ontological duality of the self and the not self is what or the objective and the subjective aspect. The subjective aspect is the puruṣa, the objective aspect is the prakrti. Forms the main context of the Samkhya darśana. This is what the Samkhya Pravachana Sutra Bhashya of Vijnana Bhikshu talks about in terms of the meaning of the term Samkhya. Okay, so again, she one more meaning is from Samkhya Tattva Vilasa, which is written by Sri Raghunath. See, where he says that Samkhya is the exposition of the self through proper discrimination. Again, this is where the Viveka aspect of comes, where it discriminates between the self principle and the not self principle. So this is this discriminative deliberation of the ontological entities is what highlighted here. Similarly, we have from Mahabharata where it says that they are known as Samkhyas because they make Samkhya deliberations and also declare the primordial nature of Prakriti and the 24 categories. So Mahabharata also endorses that. And then another verse from Mahabharata which says that the measure or the pramana of false dosha and qualities guna is described in detail in the division of vibhaga, intending some purpose, let it be understood as enumeration. So I mean, this again is an enumeration point that is highlighted, and the other important point it talks about is the gunas, the different gunas and the doshas related to these gunas and other things. So the trigunatva of the prakriti and its evolutes is what one of the major classification of Sankhya. So the Trigunam forms the very basis of Sankhya darśana. That is what is highlighted in this Mahabharata verse. Okay. So now with this understanding on the term Sankhya and its two meaning, both enumeration and deliberation, and testimonies from both the ancient Indic scriptures as well as from recent modern scholars, both Indian and Western. We move on to the next important concept of puruṣa and prakriti. So these are the core of Sankhya duality. So we have the puruṣa, which is the self, and the prakriti, which is nature or matter. Okay, so if you see, according to Sankhya darśana, so it is puruṣas are multiple, and prakriti is a singularity. So puruṣa is pure manifold conscious witness enjoyer kinds of tattva, and prakriti is primordial unconscious nature. Okay, so this is the basic classification of puruṣa and prakriti, and how they both are responsible for the manifestations of the various other tattvas is what we will be covering in the subsequent sessions. Okay. Now we will take up each of these terms and try to understand, starting with the etymology of these terms. So let's start with puruṣa lakṣaṇam. So again, we get back to Amarasimha and his famous Amarakosha, which is one, as I said, is one of the most widely referred to thesaurus in Sanskrit. So where he says thus: Hetu, cause, karana, reason, bija, nidana, origin, and adhikarana, primordial cause. These terms describe the various aspects of causation and origin. Kshetrajna, knower of the field; Atma, soul; Purusha, spirit; Pradhana, primordial matter; and Prakriti, nature. These terms represent the philosophical concepts often contrasting the soul and matter with the Prakriti. So this is what we talked about, where there is enumeration and there is a deliberation of differences between the spirit and matter, the primordial spirit and the primordial matter. So these terms are what is covered. So Kshetrajna, Atma, and Purusha are all terms which are used synonymously in Indian literature, referring to Purusha Tattva. So among Purusha and Prakriti, Amarakosha has used these three terms as more or less synonyms. We will try to deep dive with some of them, and similarly, when we take about Prakriti, we'll deep dive about Prakriti. So accordingly, here Purusha is a synonym for Swabhavika Vyapalakṣana Atmanaha. So innate pervasive nature of the self. while the one highlighting this, okay, this innate knower or nature of self is the term kshetrajna. Kshetrajna means kshetra means a field or a knower. So kshetrajna means a knower of the field. So so this is what is highlighted here. Incidentally, the former is glorified as the 14th sacred name of God. Okay, so it is the Divya Nama of God in the Sri Vishnu Sahasranama. So that's what we wanted to highlight here. So Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, where Gita Acharya Bhagavan Sri Krishna explains Kshetra and Kshetrajna in great detail. And Sāṃkhya is an integral to Bhagavad Gita. We will discuss that as we proceed. Now, between these synonymous terms for puruṣa, let us first take Atman, which is a very, very, very commonly used term cutting across Indian literature. So both for accepting Atman in the Hindu religion, and as well as the denial of the Anatmavada and the Anatmavada of Buddhism, etc. So Atma, the term is very, 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 very integral to Indian philosophy, either in accepting or rejecting it. Okay, so what exactly mean by accept or reject is a separate topic by itself, but we'll take it when we get into Buddhism. But now, for now, we will focus on the etymology of the term Atman. So the Atman, according to scholars, is derived from the root verb which means to breathe, and thus it relates to prana shakti. So that's why we call that over living being as a prani. So prani means prana. Prana is the vital energy. So even in Western philosophy, we call it as vital, because without prana we don't live, right? We can't live. So so Atma is derived from breathe. So that which breathes vitality or of life is called as a prana. So there is a famous Sanskrit sloka which says that the principle that holds breath is the Atman. Okay. So let us now break the term Atman based on its etymological roots again. Atman is derived in another alternatively as At, means to go. Okay. And Ma, to measure. So it is the way how we start measuring the breath life cycle or the life cycle of Atma, or the knowledge span, or whatever it is, right? So it is related to a measurement. That's why it is called as derived from At and Go. These are all very interesting. They are all interrelated terms. Okay, alternative ways of etymologically deriving, but they are not islands. Again, they have we can stitch these dots together. Okay, then it is also derived from up, to enter or to obtain. So which talks about fluidity. Then again we saw already that it is derived related to prana or breath. So it is plus tma. So A means to breathe and Tma means the self. So it all relates. So Atma is something which is self-breathing, self-flowing energy that is also conscious. Okay. So we'll talk about the consciousness aspect as we move along. So one of the oldest references that I could trace back on the term Atma is from the Rig Veda. So the Rig Veda's 190 10th mandala, 192 mantra, and the 13th verse on that. So where he talks about may Pushan protect us in motion. May the all gods, the son of waters, Agni and Vayu, wind, protect our Yajna fire, worship Vata, Vayu, the soul of all bodies. So it talks about fluidity. So so there is animation. That's why we call animal means that which animates. So there is a fluidity, there is a prana, there is a vitality, there is an energy. So that energy is what is highlighted, in my opinion, in Rigveda. So in fact, that is why Jivatman, living being, is also referred as a pranin or a prani. So interestingly, the English term animal is derived from the Latin term animalis, okay, which means having breath. So not only in Sanskrit, but also the Western philosophy is derived on similar concepts, where animal is or animate, which means having breath, is what the English term animal means. So which also means fluidity of energy or a breath, um, etc. Okay. Another etymology related to the English term is animate or move, which we already talked about. So that which moves. So this also corresponds to the earlier etymological definitions of to enter, to obtain, or to breathe, or to measure. All these talks about a vitality. Uh, okay. So the connection of gati, movement, lies in the idea of jivata or ayush, life itself. So a pranin or living being or animal is characterized as a gata, motion, okay, ojas, vitality, and vyapti, activity. To animate something is to imbue it with life, enabling it with a movement. That's why we call it as animal, as animate, and so even we call it as jada and chitta chit. When we categorize, right, we call it as jiva is something which can animate itself, and jada is something which is inert. So this inert is not only physical movement, but also in terms of the sensible flow of senses, sensations, flow of thoughts, etc. Right. So there is consciousness movement also. In other words, okay. So this is what the term Atman means. Interestingly, the term okay, which means movement, gata, motion, charati, move. We saw charati, um, Amarakosha, as when we related to these terms. Okay, acharati, act, acharati, sorry, act, etc. All seem to have a common etymological link. They are all derived from the Sanskrit root at, to move. Etymologically, the term Atman can be derived in multi ways from At, we saw that already. Alternatively, it is derived from up, which also we saw, to permeate. Okay. Then we saw Amarakosha as one of the earliest reference, very popular treatise, or basically Sanskrit thesaurus. So even much earlier to that, we have Nirukta, which is basically a Vedanga, uh, where it is say that Atma is derived from the root at, to go, or up, to obtain. That is, it may be called obtained in the sense that it is omnipresent. So this is a very, very philosophical definition of Atma, where Atma is all pervasive, omniscient, uh, omnipresent being or consciousness. So that is etymologically derived. This huge philosophical concept is etymologically derived from Nirukta. And Nirukta, as you know, is provides etymology of Vedic terms. So this whole idea is Vedic when we talk about Atma. So that's why we started with Rigveda, and then we also see how Nirukta and Amaraposha, both from a grammar as well as from the semantics, as well as in the philosophical context, the term Atma is very, very, very beautiful concept, and how it has parallels in the Western philosophy also. As you already touched upon, the dynamic nature of the self. Next, quickly move on to the pervasive nature. The following verses from So far we have seen Atma means the vitality or the dynamic nature. Then there is a pervasive nature. The following verses from Atharvana Veda Mantra declares this, where it says that, behold, now the lotus with 9 gates, encircled by the 3 strands, within is a great marvel, consisting in the self. This it is of which the knowers of Brahman have knowledge. Who knows the self, wise, youthful, never aging, will have no fear of death. Being free from desire, immortal, wise, in his own self, resourceful, full of fresh sap, in nothing falling short. So this is what Atharva Veda, the 10th mandala of the Atharva Veda says, where it is Mrityor Atmanam is one of the references where, see, Atma doesn't have death. So Atma is like the energy of modern physics, where it can neither be created nor be destroyed, but it can be only state transitioned as part of the samsara chakra, the metempsychosis. So Atman has no birth or death. So that reference can be traced back to Atharva Veda, which is the fourth major Veda within the Vedic Samhitas. So we saw the first Rig Veda, as also we are seeing the fourth Atharva Veda. So now we'll look at another interesting from the Agama. So far we have seen from the Vedic scriptures. Now we will look at the Agamic scriptures, Agamic or the Tantric schools. So where we'll take the Swachanda Bhairava Tantra, which is one of the most important tantras of Saivism, particularly the Abhedavada Saivism or the Trika Saivism or Kashmiri Saivism, which is also called as a Paramadvaya Advaita Trika Saivism. Okay. So here what it says is that etymologically the term prana, which is discussed above, is integral to the Atman, is derived from the word to fill. So how we are talking about prana, how Atma is related to prana. Now we are trying to see how the term prana itself as its etymological roots, which is derived from means to fill, and also it is a deliberating the pervasive nature of the self. Okay, so let us come back to Swachanda Bhairava Tantra, where it is stated that the vital breath prana, composed of the inhalation and exhalation, is directed towards the act of release and replenishment. Constantly the replenishing. Okay, it desires in the chest of living beings. Since it enables the act of breathing, it is renowned as prana, life force. Again, how vitality is related to prana and prana is related to Atma is highlighted in the Agamanta corpus, just like in the Vedic corpus. So we have seen Swachanda Bhairava Tantra here as a testimony. Again, the pervasive nature of the self. So vitality and pervasiveness are the two main aspects of Atma. So the pervasive nature is further reiterated in the following verses from the Isavasya Upanishad. Again, going back to the Vedic corpuses, the Isavasya Upanishad says that, but he who sees everywhere the self in all existences and all existences in the self. So everything is Brahman and Brahman is everything. Okay, this is what is highlighted here. Shrinks not thereafter from aught. He in whom it is the self being that has become all existences, that are becomings for he has the perfect knowledge. How shall he be diluted when shall he have grief who sees everywhere oneness? It is he that has gone abroad, that which is bright, bodiless, without scar of imperfection, without sinews, pure, unpierced by evil. the seer, the thinker, the one who becomes everywhere, the self-existent, as ordered objects perfectly according to their nature from years sempiternal. Okay, so Isavasya Upanishad also basically highlights the all-pervasive nature of Atman. So Atman is what pervades everything. So this is a very interesting concept where we are talking about now a Vedantic concept and how this is related to the puruṣa and the prakṛti aspects, where the puruṣa is corresponding to Atman and we have the prakṛti also. But how the prakṛti also has puruṣa as its inherent self, the archa avatarana within the prakriti is what is the bridging the gap between the Samkhya and the Vedanta darśana. We'll take it when we get deep dive there. Now we will look at what Sri Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavad-pada in his famous commentary on the Isavasya Upanishad quoted above talks about this. This text describes the real nature of the Atman spoken of in the previous text. Saha means the Atman previously spoken of. Pariyagat means went round. The meaning is he is all pervading like the Akash. Okay. So Sukram means pure, hence bright, resplendent. Akayam means bodiless. Kayam means bodiless. Akaya means bodiless. So Kaya means body, Akaya means bodiless. Having the Linga Sharira or subtle body. So this means that the formless energy, okay, the formless energy, the vitality of the formless energy, which is all pervasive, is reiterated in Isavasya Upanishad and commented upon by Bhagavad-pada. So that is what is highlighted. So the whole idea is to give the larger context of the term Atman. Okay. Interestingly, the root verb Atman, to move, particularly in its usage with Atman, does not merely imply physical, bhautika gata, which I already talked about. It does that physical motion, but it also implies vayuna gata, gnostic motion, as testified in the following verse quoted by Paramacharya Shivagraga Yogin in his famous treatise Shaiva Paribhasha. So Shaiva Paribhasha is one of the principal treatises in Shaiva Siddhanta. So Shaiva Siddhanta is Agamanta darśana based on Veda Shaiva darśana, Shaiva Agamas. So we saw Kashmir Shaivism reference here, we saw Vedanta references here, we are now seeing Shaiva Siddhanta reference here by Acharya, Paramacharya Sri Shivagraga Yogin in his Shaiva Paribhasha, where he says the root Atha is understood in the sense of constant gamana, so constant movement or activity. Since the Atman is of the nature of the knower of the Gati, has a sense of knowledge. The souls are pervasive, innumerable, of the nature of intelligence, and belong to the three classes of pursues. So there are three categorization of the Atmas, or the Baddha Atmas, or the bound souls in Shaiva Siddhanta. So we will discuss about them when we get into Shaiva Siddhanta. So for now, let us understand that the word Atma is related to vibration, it is related to movement, and it is related to pervasiveness. Okay, all these three concepts have been referred again and again in various scriptures, including the Vedic scriptures, the Agamic scriptures, as well as the Western philosophy, right from Greek and the Latin philosophies. So all of them correspond to the same theme. Okay. Now again, deep diving into the consciousness aspect of the self. So we saw the vitality aspect of the self, the pervasive aspect of the self. The third most important aspect is the consciousness. So it's Sat, Chit and Ananda. So is what consciousness the what is say the Swarupa Guna of the Atma. So here what is highlighted as part of Shiva Sutra by Vasugupta Maharishi. So Shiva Sutra is actually considered to be a revelation by Paramashiva himself through Maharishi Vasugupta. So he talks about Chaitanyam Atma. So how Chaitanyam and Atma mean the same, or the omniscient self. So self is omniscience, or consciousness is the self. So this is another major important aspect, along with the vitality of the self, as it is related to prana. Then we also saw the all pervasiveness of self, so which is the omnipresence, and we also see the sarvagnyata, or the consciousness aspect of the self, so the omniscience of the self, which is testified in Shiva Sutra, so where it says Chaitanyam Atma. So Shiva Sutra has a huge corpus of commentarial text to it. So we will see all the principal comments. The Shiva Sutra Bhaskara Vartika. So Sri Bhaskaracharya provides a Vartika on it. So this is the nature of the self is consciousness, which is proved Siddha to be both knowledge and action. It is unobscured, so who can deny its Shiva nature? So Shiva nature means we can say Paramashiva, the absolute Brahman. It also means absolute auspiciousness or benignness of divinity. Okay, so this is what Bhaskara Vartika says. And then the Varajarada Vartika says that the Supreme Shiva's nature is consciousness, taking the form of awareness in action, Chit Kriya. This alone is the self as absolute freedom, therefore. He is the Supreme Shiva, or else, so as to instruct the children who ask, what then is the self? It is said, the self is not the body, nor the vital breath, nor the mind, nor space, nor a void beings. Rather, the Supreme Lord has taught consciousness alone is the self. And this very consciousness is the self, its natural inherent form. Because the universe whose nature is knowable or object of awareness is set in motion by particular impulse, there is no form of anything whatsoever that can exist without being in some way knowable or experienced. But what is experienced as an object becomes of the nature of consciousness, because it is essentially one with consciousness in its very identity. Thus, by this method taught by the Shiva, that means it is basically the Shiva's instruction. Okay, it follows for all beings, moving and unmoving. Consciousness alone is the universe's ultimate highest reality, its true essential nature. So here we see how the term is related to consciousness, and not just limited consciousness, but Shiva's consciousness or Brahman's consciousness, or the highest omniscience. Okay, so it is not just when we say Atman, we are not restricting it to Jivatmata when we talk about the prana, the vitality. So that is why here it is highlighted. It is not mere just prana, just not the limited being or the Jivatma or the Baddhatma, but it also refers to the Paramatma. So the supreme consciousness or the supreme self. So that is what is highlighted here. Okay. Okay. Similarly, we have Shiva Sutra Vimarshini, which is again a very, very important commentary on Shiva Sutra by Shemaraja. So, which is who is one of the principal disciples of Acharya Sri Abhinava Gupta. Acharya Sri Abhinava Gupta is He's one of the most important acharyas in Kashmir Shaivism. Um, so he's a polyglot. Shemaraja is his disciple. So in this Shiva Sutra Vimarshani, this is what goes. In this world, nothing exists which is outside the range of consciousness. The activities of consciousness is universal throughout. A conscious being, Chetana, is one whose conscious. My eyesight is becoming very poor. Is one who considers, that is, things. One who thinks or is conscious. Okay, the Sian suffix in Chaitanya shows the relationship. Chaitanya, therefore, connotes freedom in respect of all knowledge, and so it also represents a Swadandriya Sakti, the freedom. Okay, so we saw it represents consciousness, it represents vitality, it represents pervasiveness, it also represents freedom. So the omnipotence, freedom means omnipotence, so omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence. How this very term Atma relates to all these three. That is why Satchitanandam, or omnipresence, omnipotence, omnibliss, or omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence are the important aspects of Brahman. Is what is highlighted here. So Brahman is nothing but Atman. We'll discuss as we move along. Okay. So next, the important term or the core term related to Samkhya darśana is puruṣa, where the Atma is referred here as puruṣa. So we already saw Amarapurusha, how these terms are synonymous. We have seen the etymological and the philosophical context of the term Atma. Now, similarly, we will see how the term Purusha is etymologically derived. Okay. So we'll start with Nirukta, where a Purusha or man's soul should take in the form of Purishaya, the city dweller. So we saw Atma is that one which pervades, right? All pervasive. So Purusha also means one who pervades a city or a place, or so it is called as a Purusha. So Purusha or a person is derived in multiple ways. So that is what is shown on the right hand side. Okay, and left hand side is the references for it. The Purusha is a person who is a Puri Shadaha, one who sits in a city, or Purishayaha, one who sleeps in a city, or is derived from the root pra, to fill. So he fills the interior with the reference to the inner soul. So which means that it is a antaryami shakti, which is the indwelling spirit across both matter and the self. So it is what pervades the entire manifested being. So that is what is highlighted here. The Purusha is something which pervades. So what it pervades the Sharira as its Shariri. So it pervades any material aspect as its Antaryamin. Okay. So again, there is one more Nirukta reference where one says one who resides in the city is called as a Purusha, as explained by the etymologists. So this is what the Nirukta says. So Purusha can be derived as Puru, which means abundant, and Sha, happiness. So that is what Purusha is. So Purusha sa iti Purushaha, one who brings abundant happiness, rests in abode or Purusha. So this is one way of interpreting the term Purusha. Then Puru and Usha are so Puru means town. Pura means town. So we say this Puram, that Puram here, right? Puram means town. So Usha means light or effulgence, or right. Purusha means it, Pura Usha iti Purushaha. One who brings aurora in the abode is Purushaha. So this light means not just physical light, it is the light of enlightenment, which is the light of wisdom, the omniscience, or right. The another way is Puri means abode, city, which already saw, and Shete means rest or dwell. So that is Purusha, we already saw that. Then Puri means abode, and Vas means to enter. So that is why Purusha is derived as Puri Vasati iti Purushaha. One who enters into an abode is Purushaha. Okay. Then Puri, abode, and Shaya or sleep. So we have Tarasayana Perumal, we have Vishnu who is in a sleeping pose. We have Buddha who is in a sleeping pose. We see Shiva in a sleeping pose. So this all these can be related. All these concepts. So Purushaha iti Purusha, one who sleeps or rests in the abode is Purushaha. So why it called sleeps is that it is the Sakshi Chaitanya, it is the silent observer who is in the highest state, meditative state of silence. That is what is sleep. So sleep means does not mean that the physical sleep or the sleep of where there is lack of consciousness, but this sleep is the yoga nidra. So this is a yogic sleep. Okay. So the Linga Mahapurana says that the word Purusha is derived thus Purushete, he who lies in this body. Okay. Again, similarly, Adi Shankaracharya in his Shankara Bhashya on Srimad Bhagavad Gita says that Purushaha, person derived, is in the sense of staying in the town, Pura, that is the body. So this is again reiterating whatever etymological references that we made. Okay. Then Amara Kosha again refers it to us. We saw that Hetu, Karana, Bija, Vidana, these terms describe the various aspects of causation origins. Kshetra, green and over of the field. This is again the same reference from the Amara Kosha. So there we took it for Atma. Here we are talking about the Purusha. And Rigveda, as the famous, the Vedic corpus of the Purusha Sukta is one which is recited and chanted and meditated upon even today. So where the term Purusha Sukta has Purusha as part of it. Okay. So of the 1,000-headed is the Purusha, 1,000-eyed and 1,000-legged, enveloping the earth from all sides. He transcends it by 10 fingers length. All this manifestation is the Purusha alone, whatever was and whatever will be. He is the Lord of immortality, for he transcends all in his form as food, the universe. Such is his glory, but greater still is the Purusha. 1/4 of him, all beings are, while 3/4 of him arise above as the immortal being. So all that is manifest today is just 1/4 of that manifestation. There is 3/4 which is still hidden, which is what modern cosmology talks about, or modern science calls of the dark energy or dark matter, which we have still no clue of what that energy or what the darkness of that matter is. So majority of what we know is on the darker side. Rather, we know that we don't know is on the is the dark matter or dark side. So that is what is highlighted way back in the Rig Veda itself as part of the Purusha Sukta, where it says that all that we know is only the 1/4 of the manifestness. So there is a transcendent aspect of it. So the Brahman or God takes two forms. One is the immanent nature, where it is all pervading immanence, and there is also the transcendent nature. So what is manifest to us, to our human outreach in based on its normal capacities is just 1/4. So the 3/4 is beyond its capacity. That is what is highlighted here. Again, Atharva Veda talks about, was he created from above or created crosswise? How did man pervade all the regions? Since he knows the city or fort, so this again city or fort of Brahman. So it is all related to pervading inside a city or pervade. So here city means matter or prakrti or the nature. Okay, so the objective side, the subject pervades the object also as an antaryami. So that is what is highlighted whenever we talk about the pervading aspect inside a city. That the puruṣa takes that root where it is pervades into the material aspect. So even though Samkhya defines between two ontological entities as puruṣa and prakrti, the Vedas say how within the so-called prakrti or matter, also the puruṣatva pervades as the antaryami brahmana. Okay, so that is what the Atharva Veda says. The Taittiriya Aranyaka again talks about, then the creator found in the waters of the tortoise Kurma, one of the earliest references of Kurma Avadara, crawling inside. The creator said, "O Kurma, you have been formed by my skin and flesh." Kurma said, "No, it is not so. I have not come from your body. I have been here from ancient times." Okay, so which means the omnipresence of Atma. The Purusha nature of man, Puruṣatvam, has accomplished this. That tortoise having 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, and 1,000 years, and 1,000 eyes came up or stood up from the water. Okay, so this exactly is what is meant by the term Purusha. He who pervades it, and who is eternal. Okay, so that is what is highlighted here. So then we come to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is one of the oldest and one of the largest Upanishad corpus of the Yajurveda. Basically the Krishna Yajurveda. It is called Brihada Aranyaka Upanishad. So where Aranyaka aspect and the Upanishad aspect are integrated. So that's how we differentiate between Krishna Yajurveda and Shukla Yajurveda. In Shukla Yajurveda, the classification is more clear between the Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishad. But in Krishna Yajurveda, it is not so. So the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad has both the Aranyaka aspect and the Upanishad aspect of it. So in this important Upanishad, it is stated thus. This is that meditation on things mutually helpful which Dadyak, versed in the Atharva Veda, taught the Ashwins. Perceiving this, the Rishi said, "He made bodies with 2 feet and bodies with 4 feet." So the humans and animals. That supreme being first entered the bodies as a bird, the subtle body. He, on account of his dwelling in all bodies, is called the Puruṣa. There is nothing that is not covered by him, nothing that is not pervaded by him. So this is what is highlighted here. Okay. So in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, for example, verse 2.5.1 through 2.5.14 in the above sacred text explains as to how the madhu, which is part of the madhu brahmana. So the madhu, the honey, symbolizing the madhuryam atmanaha, sweetness of the self, which is the sarvavyapin, all pervasive, and embraces the sarva bhutanam, all things. So it is an all pervasive vital energy that pervades or embraces all things, both animate and inanimate. That is, all manifested evolutes from the smallest to the largest, make up the phenomenal universe, including but not limited to Prithvi, Earth, Apas, Agni, Vayu. This is the basic, all the manifested entities, Aditya, Desha, Chandra, etc. And each of these verses categorically declares this indeed is described as all this is but the self. This is immortal. This is Brahman. This is everything. And finally, the following verse summarizes this. So this is the verse on the right hand side, which I just read out. Okay. And Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavad-pada, in his famous Bhashya on this, again explains this. This is that meditation. Okay, while commenting on the above quoted Brihadaranyaka Upanishad passage, here he says this. This is that meditation, etc., is to be explained as before. The two foregoing mantras sum up the story which is connected with the rite called Pravargya. So which is basically, as I said, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is Aranyaka part and also the Upanishad part, where Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda meet each other. Okay, they express in the form of a story of a purport of two chapters that have a bearing on that rite. Now the text proceeds to describe through the two following mantras the purport of the two chapters that deal with the meditation on Brahman. It has been said that Brahmana versed in the Atharva Veda also taught the Ashwins a secret meditation on things mutually helpful. So here Ashwins represents the horse, so the mythological horse. So they also have a celestial presence from astronomical point of view or astrological point of view. I'm not getting that. But here Ashwin represents not only the vitality in terms of movement, the horsepower, etc. It also means the breath, the prana shakti, the kundalini shakti, etc. So the whole vitality related with the atma and puruṣa. Okay. So what he is telling is that it has been said that the Brahmana versed in the Atharva Veda is taught the Ashwins a secret meditation on things mutually helpful. What the meditation was is now being explained. He made bodies, etc. The Supreme Lord who made this universe came out of the unmanifested state in the course of his manifesting the undifferentiated name and form. After first projecting the world such as this earth made bodies with 2 feet, humans, and bird bodies and bodies with 4 feet, animal bodies. The Supreme Being, the Lord, first entered the bodies as a bird, that is, as a subtle body. The text itself explains it. He, an account of his dwelling in all bodies, is called the puruṣa. So this is what Adi Shankara says. He, an account of his dwelling in all bodies, is called puruṣa. There is nothing that is not covered by him. Likewise, there is nothing that is not pervaded by him. So he basically covers. So there is a avarana shakti, there is the tirodhana shakti, or the avarana shakti, or the encapsulating power, which Roger Penrose in his modern cosmology calls it as the cosmic censorship, right? So he is made in Western, or rather than calling it Western, then modern astronomy or modern cosmology maps very much with our Indian systems. This is one such mapping of the cosmic censorship, which is the Maya, the Vidya Maya aspect when we get into Vedanta side of it. Okay, so there is nothing that is not covered by him. Likewise, there is nothing that is not pervaded by him. That is, everything is enveloped by him as its inside and outside. Thus, it is he who is a name and a form, as the body and organ is inside and outside everything. In other words, the mantra "he made bodies," etc., briefly enunciates the unity of the self. Okay, this is again very, 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 very important. explanation on the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad by the Bhashyakara, who is none other than Sri Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavad-pada. Okay, so again we switch gears to Mahabharata. So where Kurmadeva, while explaining to Prajapati in the following verse, okay, which is part of the Shanti Parva in the Mahabharata. So he declares the pervading aspect. Since the great soul pervades through and resides in this holy city, the body, with 9 gates. So the human body is considered having 9 apertures or gates. We will discuss when we get there. Possessed of these organs. So he is called puruṣa. So the whole idea of puruṣa is that one who pervades, okay, under an cover or encapsulation. The cover or encapsulation is the jivatva or the bodily encapsulation or the material encapsulation. But underlying that is the all-pervading Brahman, who is the puruṣa. Okay, again quoting from Mahabharata, the puruṣa is glorified as the sacred name of Mahavishnu. Okay, Vishnu Sahasranama. Okay, Putatma, one whose nature is purity. Who is purity? The Paramatma, he who is the Supreme One and the Atman, Muktatman. Paramagatihi, the highest goal of the liberated one. One for whom there is no decay. Purushaha, one who abides in the body, or Pura. Sakshi, one who witnesses everything. Kshetrajna, the knower of the field of the body. Akshara, he who is without destruction. Okay, so this is what is in the Mahabharata, which has the Vishnu Sahasranama, it's 1,000 names glorifying Mahavishnu, where these names that we talked about are there. Okay, so Adi Shankara, in his famous Bhashya on Vishnu Sahasranama, he says that he that reclines in the body, Pur, okay, as the Mahabharata says, since the great soul pervades through and resides in the holy city, the body with 9 gates, which we referred earlier, organs, is called puruṣa. By a permutation of the letter A into A, it would give the meaning he who existed, asit, as to exist before pura, everything. The Shruti, the Taittiriya Aranika says, I indeed existed here before. As he existed before, he is called puruṣa, or because he resides shad in the excellent ones, puru, or because he bestows shan, to give rewards, puru, many, or because destroys, so to cut the forms of the worlds during pralaya, or he pervades, to reside, shad, in everything. The 5th Veda, Mahabharata, says he is named the Supreme Person since he pervades and resides in everything. So the Vishnu Sahasranama Bhashya summarizes all that we have discussed so far. Okay, referring to Taittiriya Aranyaka, the Mahabharata, etc. Okay, and then says how he is the pervading consciousness, puruṣa, who is also the Atman. Okay, again referring to the Agamanta side or the Tantric side, we have Swachandra Bhairava Tantra, so which says that the body or the city Pura is called the prime principle, as it is densely packed with manifold creations. The one who nourishes and sustains this body is thus remembered as puruṣa, the divine soul, the supreme Lord. Sri Kantanada, an epithet of Shiva, by the force of necessity, destiny, and actions. Okay, karma binds the individual soul, pashu. So there is the padi, pasu, and pasha. Padi is the Parama Purusha or the Paramatman. Pashu, the bounded soul, is the Jivatman. Okay, and the Pashu is bound by what? Pasha, which is the Vidya Maya or whatever, which has the three elements of karmam, anavam, karmam, and maya, according to the Siddhanta schools or the Agamanta schools. Intellect, buddhi, bound by the three gunas. So the three gunas we talked about, which is the core of Sāṃkhya philosophy, is also there in the Kashmir Saivism and Saiva Siddhanta. Operating through its transformation into nature is enforced firmly through the bounds of sense organs. Bound in this manner, the soul moves within the domains of Maya, illusion. So this transmigration of the soul is the vitality, is what is referred to as the fluidity, and the mundane realm. Therefore, one is called samsari, a transmigrating being. Okay, as one wanders again and again in the cycle of rebirth. The objects of the senses, such as sound and the like, exist, and so too does the one who perceives them. Thus, the objects are proclaimed to be supreme and are diverse, spreading over in various forms. Okay. Again, Swachanda Bhairava Tantra, different mantra says, that which operates in the three worlds and manifests directly is the result of the natural union. This yoga is described to you as the supreme path leading to liberation. Beyond this, the puruṣa, the soul, is situated in the center of the lotus, symbolic of the heart. He is of the nature of consciousness and resides pervading all objects. So he is the Hridaya Sthala. So he is renowned as Jiva, the living essence by whom the body lives and is sustained. When he departs, the body becomes lifeless, and when devoid of consciousness, the body decays. And so how the concept of prana and atma and purusha are related is what is highlighted in Swachanda Bhairava Tantra, where the atma pervades as prana shakti, through prana shakti inside the body, the sharira, and life sustains as long as the prana is there. Once the prana, when the sharira loses its atma, it dies. So now we'll move on to one more important text, which is the Ayurveda. Ayurveda is very much related to Ayush, okay, with the what to say, with the health of the self. Okay, so Ayurveda is one of the most important. It's still considered as a Veda. So and is one of the most important medical treatises of ancient India. So where it says that Purusha comprises of 6 dhatus. So this takes from more focused on the jiva side of it, particularly on the physiology and the biology or the medical side of it, where Purusha comprises of 6 dhatus, Sabda dhatus, Shiva, the 5 Mahabhutas in their subtle form, and consciousness. The element of consciousness alone could be considered Purusha. So here what it means is that the Purusha and the prakṛti, the Purusha aspect is the consciousness aspect, or the subjective aspect, and the animated aspect. The prakṛti is the bodily aspect, the material aspect, the achit aspect, or the jada aspect. According to another classification, Purusha comprises of the 24 dhatus, okay, the mind, 10 indriyas. So Purusha also considers this. Here the Purusha is the Antaryami Purusha. Okay. So there are different interpretations here. So the Chaitanya, okay, the Panchabhutani, 5 main gross elements. Then there is consciousness. Then there's one more interpretation which says that it is consciousness, and one more interpretation it says that it is all the five gross elements, the five conative senses, so the pancha mahabhuta, the pancha karmendriyas, the pancha jnanendriyas, okay, the pancha tanmatras, and manas, buddhi, ahangara, etc. Okay, so which all constitutes of the prakriti. Okay, in Vedanta they also add chitta to this list. Okay, so if you say this Atharva Veda, this Ayurveda's definition, it talks about all the three interpretations. At one point, it says that it is the five gross. The very beginning, it says it is the five gross elements and consciousness, and then it says that it is consciousness alone, and then it says it is all the 24 principles. So, so this is a very, very important slide where it talks about all the three aspects of puruṣa. So, which is the transcendent aspect as well as the immanent aspect. Okay, so far we have seen all the text or the source texts of Vedas and the Agamas on the concepts of Purusha and Atma. Now we deep dive specific to Sāṃkhya treatises. So Samkhya Karika, wherein Sri Ishvara Krishna says this. And from that contrast, it follows that the spirit is witness. So here it is Sakshi Chaitanya, and as isolation. So it is isolated. It is not impacted by the changes in the prakriti. So that is what is highlighted. And is the seer or the observer, and is inactive. So it is the potential energy and not the kinetic aspect. The kinetic aspect is the prakriti. The Purusha is the potential aspect, or the Shiva and the Shakti. Shiva is Purusha, Shakti is the Prakriti. Okay, this will later get evolved in the subsequent sessions as how the duality of Purusha and Prakriti corresponds to the being and the becoming, or the Shiva, Shakti, or the Ardhara Ishvara Tattva. Okay, so this is what Sāṃkhya Karika says. So there is witnessing. The Shariratva, so Purusha is talked in terms of its witnessing as well, the observer principle, or the Sakshi Chaitanya. The Kaivalya, it is isolated, okay, and it is indifferent. So it is indifferent to these changes, and it is Drishyatva, it is observer vision, and it is inactivity, Akritatva. So this is all what is highlighted by Sri Ishvara Krishnacharya in his Sāṃkhya Karika. Okay, Sri Vachaspati Mishra, who is a great polymath and who has written commentaries almost across all the darshanas, and particularly in Vedanta, he is one of the principal acharyas for the Bhamati school of or branch of Kevala Advaita Vedanta of Sankaradvaita. Okay, so here he writes a commentary on on Sāṃkhya Karika and calls it as Sāṃkhya Tattva Kaumudi. Okay, wherein he says thus the contrast of the character of having the three attributes. Okay, three attributes are the trigunas. We'll discuss the deep dive as we move along. And the rest, which have been set forth in Karika 11 as belonging to the unmanifest nature, as also to be manifested or products, connotes the spirit's property of being without the three attributes. So this is the isolation principle that he highlights. So the Purusha aspect isolates itself from the Prakriti aspects. Okay, three attributes which are driven by the three gunas, and being distinguishable, non-objective. So the Purusha is a subject which is non-objective. Okay, not common. That means it is unique by itself, sentient and non-productive. So it does not product anything. It's a pure Sakshi Chaitanyam. It's observer principle. Okay. Now the characters being sentient and non-objective also indicate the characteristics of being witness and seer. Okay, so there's a very important concept of being an observer or Sakshi Chaitanyam, particularly in Vedanta or the Kevala Advaita Vedanta of Shankara, and also in Buddhism, where the observer, the Sakshi Chaitanyam becomes very important. in Kevala Advaita, the observer is the Atma. Interestingly, the polarity principle of that is in the Madhyamaka schools of Buddhism, where ostensibly they talk about anatma, but there is still their observation. So they talk about the observation without the observer. Here we talk about both the observer and observation in Samkhya. In Vedanta, observer becomes more important. So there are drishti srishti vada, whether the observation precedes observer or observer precedes observation, or it is simultaneous. All these very, very, very interesting concepts are discussed and debated in various schools of Indian philosophy. Okay, here all these philosophies have this observer as a very important concept, or all of them recognize observer aspect, but whether the observer is also a participant is where the debate comes. We'll deep dive into the debate part later. But according to Sāṃkhya philosophy, which is also accepted in Vedanta, is that the puruṣa here is a Sakshi Chaitanya, mere observer. So he is not a participant. The participant is the prakṛti. So which is technically a chit, but gets the reflection of puruṣa. Okay. So this is what is highlighted in Sāṃkhya Tattva Kaumudi, which is a commentary on the Sāṃkhya Karika written by Ishwara Krishna. Okay, let's move on to another verse from Sāṃkhya Krishna, where Ishwara Krishna Acharya again says this: because all composite objects are for another's use, because there must be observance of reason for the three attributes and other properties existing of spirit, because there must be control, the cause, because there must be someone experiencing, and because there is a tendency towards isolation or final beatitude, that the spirit must be there. So he is trying to give a logical reasoning of why a puruṣa tattva exists. Okay, so he is giving a fivefold reasoning to it. So where he talks about the aggregation, aggregates either for another. So there is a purpose there. So there is, the whole of manifestation is not purposeless. There is a purpose. The purpose is the Leela of God, or for God's sake, or there is a divine deliberation there. Okay, so there is so the composite categories, okay, metaphors exist to serve a purpose. So unlike in modern physics, where the purpose or conscious purpose is not deliberated or is silently ignored, or to be more honest, neglected, here the manifestation is not purposeless. There is a purpose there. Okay, so that is what is highlighted, and the purpose for that is puruṣa. So the puruṣa's Brahma Sankalpa. Okay, so it is all for the sake of God, or for the soul's sake, or the self's sake. Okay, and for any activity, for anything, while there is an activity, there should be something which, when there is change, there is always something that doesn't change. So this is where the Hindu schools differ from the Buddhist schools. So while Buddhist schools recognize the change, they don't recognize the changeless. Here we recognize both the change and the changeless. Puruṣa represents the changeless entity, okay, and prakṛti represents the change. So the being and the becoming. Being is the changeless self, and becoming is the ever-changing self. Okay, so both these aspects are highlighted here. So the three gunas are what transforms, or what triggers these changes, which is part of the prakriti. And puruṣa, because he is the changeless, he is unaffected by this. Okay, so need for an experience. So any phenomena. So this is a phenomenal realm where which gets into an empirical mode. So we have vyavaharika satya, is called as in Vedanta, right? So this vyavaharika satya is empirical. That means empirical means that can be experienced. So so this experience needs an experiencer. Okay, so that is what is highlighted here. and finally the striving for liberation. So once you experience, you're getting bound, and there is a gamification of you coming out of it. So which is what Panchamahakritya, the fivefold acts of yoga, where there is obscuration, where there is covering or hiding, as we saw in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad there. And there is also release from the covering, which is the moksha. So this is a gamification, or which is called as the Brahma Leela, which is also highlighted here. Okay, so for all these 5 reasons, Ishvara Krishna in his Sāṃkhya Karika explains the relevance of the Purusha Tattva. Then there is Sāṃkhya Pravachana Sutra, which is actually attributed to Sri Kapila Maharishi, the founding father of Sāṃkhya darśana. Of course, this the original Sāṃkhya Sutra of Kapila is no longer available. There is a later version, which some scholars say, which is an added version, which is a later version, is the Sāṃkhya Pravachana Sutra, which is much older than the Sāṃkhya Karika of Ishvara Krishna in terms of history or chronological dating. However, it is a very important treatise where it is said that from the several allotment of birth, etc., multiplicity of the souls is to be inferred. So far we have understood what is Purusha from the Vedic corpus, from the Agamic corpus, how it is related to the concept of Atma. We also talked about the Greek philosophies, the Latin terms, how it is there in Western philosophy, etc. And then we talked about modern science of Roger Penrose and all those concepts. And then we moved specifically into the Samkhya literature or the scriptures, where we talked about the Purusha and the Prakriti. The Purusha is the observer principle and the Prakriti is the dynamic principle, and why there is a Purusha concept. Now we talked about the next important point is that this Purusha, according to Sāṃkhya darśana, is multiple. So there is Aneka Puruṣavāda or Aneka Jīvavāda is debated in Advaita. Like that, here it is Aneka Puruṣavāda. So like Sāṃkhya, like Saiva Siddhanta, like the Dvaitavāda, various schools talk about multiplicity of the Jivatmas, the Baddha Jivatmas. That is what is highlighted here. Okay, so the Sāṃkhya Pravachana Sutra talks about multiple Purushas. Okay, and then Sāṃkhya Sutra as a Bhashya by Vijñāna Bhikshu, where it is another polyglot who provides a very interesting integration of 2 main philosophies or 3 main philosophies: Sāṃkhya, Yoga, and Kevala Advaita Vedanta of Shankara. So Vijñāna Bhikshu is very, very, very important in that respect. Although, to be honest, not much of importance is given to him in both the Vedantic circles and as well as in the yoga circle, but he is a very important acharya and not to be missed. So coming to his Bhashya, here he says birth, etc., by the etc., the growth, decay, etc., which is basically the life cycle of birth, growth, decay, and death, okay, of the Jivatma, is what is meant by the growth, decay, etc., are included from the several allotment of these Jivas, from their being appointed birth to one, death to another, and so on. So this transmigration of the self, okay, within one lifetime as birth, growth, decay, and death, and post that as and the transmigration of the soul as part of the reincarnation, where it takes multiple births. Okay, so is what is highlighted here. So the Purusha are multiple according to Sāṃkhya darśana. Going back again to Sāṃkhya Karika, where Sri Ishvara Krishna says, because there is a definite adjustment of birth, death, and the organs, because there is a non-simultaneity of activity, and because there is diversity due to the 3 attributes, the plurality of the spirits is established. So we saw in the earlier slide where Sankhya Pravachana Sutra says that there are, declares of the multiplicity of souls. Here in this verses in the Sankhya Karika, Ishwar Krishna establishes the logical reason of why he says there are multiplicity of souls, or why there's says. So there are four major reasons here. So one, he says that birth, death, etc. of single corporeal series. So we can observe that every individual soul has his own life cycle within his janma, as birth, growth, decay, and death. Okay, so when one guy dies, the other person does not die, right? So each individual has this life cycle. Similarly, each individual has a waking state, sleeping state, etc. So these karya avasthas of consciousness, right? Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, Turiyam, etc. So all these states are every individual based, right? When I am awake, you can be asleep. When you are asleep, I can be awake. So when India is awake, US is sleeping because of this time zone differences, etc. So, and then the third reason is that bondage or liberation of a single or corporeal soul. Similarly, just like birth, death, just like waking, sleeping, similarly, bondage and release are also very individual. So when Adi Shankara Acharya attains Jivan Mukti, or he is Jivan Mukti, I am not yet. I am still a Baddha Atma. So many saints may come and saints may go, but other jivas are there. So that is their argument as far as the multiplicity of the soul. So one individual soul attaining moksha or mukti doesn't relieve the others also from the bondage. So which means that there is multiplicity of souls. So that is the argument here. Okay, and then the triadic quality of transposition of a single corporeal soul. So each of these souls have 24 tattvas. The prakṛti tattvas evolutes, and they are all governed by the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Okay, and the permutation combination of the sattva, rajas, and tamas varies between each individual. That is what is highlighted here. And for all these four reasons, they say the aneka jivavada or aneka puruṣavada is what is justified from Samkhya perspective. How the Ekajivavada counters this thought in Vedanta, we will discuss when we talk about Vedanta. Okay, so far we have been discussing puruṣa lakṣaṇam. Now we will move on to its counterpart, its polarity principle, the prakrti lakṣaṇam. Okay, so starting again with etymology, prakrti is pra and kriti. So prakriti means procreation or procreatrix is what is referred here. Okay, so it is kr means to do and ti means feminine. So the kriti is again further broken down into kriti, kr, which means to do. So the dhatu kr means to do and ti means feminine. So it is that's why prakriti is associated as a female or a parashakti or Maheshwari, or even in Lakshmi Tantra as Mahalakshmi. So it is takes a divine feminine form. Okay, because here the ti is associated with the feminine wording as per Sanskrit grammar. To express the action of word in the feminine, this supersedes the gun. The Skriti action, Suti praise. So this is what Ashtadhyayi, okay, which is basically a grammar text of Panini. That is what it says. Okay, and Sāṅkhya Tattva Kaumudi, wherein Vachaspati Mishra says nature is what causes. Okay, so it is the procreative cause or the moola prakriti. When you say moola, the root cause of all manifestation is prakriti, not puruṣa. So puruṣa is not the cause for anything. It is prakriti which is the cause for it. So it is the procreatrix. So that is what Sāṅkhya Tattva Kaumudi, as explained by Vachaspati Mishra, says. Okay. Now let us take Devi Bhagavata Mahapurana, which is comes part of the 18 Mahapuranas compiled by Sri Vedavyasa Maharishi. So wherein it is said, Narayana said. So it is basically jnana flow from Narayana. So, so Narayana says, "O child, who is there in this world that can describe fully the characteristics of prakrti? However, I will describe to you that which I heard from my own father, Dharma, here." So he is giving to Dharmaraja. So it is giving to Dharma. So the prefix pra in the word prakrti means exalted, superior, excellent, and the affix kriti denotes creation. So the goddess, the Devi, who is the most excellent in the work of creation, is known as the Devi Prakriti. To come closer, pra signifies the sattva guna, the most exalted quality. Kr denotes the rajoguna, and ti denotes the tamoguna. How all the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, which is what constitutes the prakriti, is identified by the very term prakriti here. Okay, so in this beautiful explanation by none other than Srimad Narayana in Srimad Devi Bhagavata Mahapurana. Okay. So I repeat, to come closer, pra signifies sattva guna, the most exalted quality. Kr denotes the rajoguna, and ti denotes the tamoguna. The sattva guna is considered as the highest, as it is perfectly clear and free from any impurities whatsoever. The rajoguna is considered intermediate, as it is this defect that it spreads a veil over the reality of things, so as to not to allow men to understand the true reality. So this is where the hiding, the covering, the avarana, or the tirodhana shakti, or the tamas aspect of the guna is considered worse, as it completely hides the real knowledge. So when the intelligence of the nature of Brahma beyond the three attributes gets tinged with the above three gunas and becomes omnipotent, then she is superior, pradhana, in the work of creation, and she is styled as prakriti. O child Narada, the state thus preceding that of creation is denoted by pra and kr, signifies creation. So the great Devi that exists before creation is called prakriti. So pre-creatrix, so before creation. Okay, so the primordial cause. Okay, what is called in Greek philosophy by Aristotle is called as an unmoved mover, right? So it is the creator which is not created. So the unmoved mover is what is the Mula Prakriti. So the state with the creation is denoted by pra, and kr signifies creation. So the great Devi that exists before creation is called Prakriti. After creation, the Paramatma, so Mula Prakriti is before creation, Prakriti is after creation. The Paramatma, so why it is Prakriti is after creation is that the creation is not a one-time event, it is an ongoing cycle. Okay, the Paramatma by his yoga, that is Maya Shakti. Okay, the holy divided himself into two parts, the right side of which was male and the left side was the female. So the puruṣa prakriti tattva, how it corresponds to the male and female aspect, is what is highlighted in the Devi Bhagavata Mahapurana. That is what we are referring here. Okay, so here this is a very important text where not only the etymological derivation, but also it talks about the synergy between puruṣa and prakriti. Then coming to Samkhya Karika, where Acharya Ishwar Krishna says, because the finite nature of the specific objects becomes homogeneous, because the evolution of being to the efficiency of the cause, because separation between cause and its products, and because of the merging of the whole world of effects, there is the unmanifest as a cause. So just as earlier he defined why there is a puruṣa, then he defined why, here he defines why there is a prakriti. Okay, so he gives the following reasons, basically the four major reasons here. Okay, so from the measurement of differences, because there are differences, then longevity, evolution from potency, and differentiation of cause and effect, okay, and the undividedness at dissolution. So all manifest objects, elements, sense, mind, etc., are finite, limited, and dependent. A collection of finite effects cannot explain itself. It points towards an infinite. So for all the manifested evolutes, right, there should be something which controls it, governs it, right, which should be infinite. So finiteness demands an infinite controller. Okay, that is what it says. Then the second point says homogeneity. All objects in the universe, despite the diversity, share common nature of producing pleasure, pain, and indifference. This is again very important. So there is a Bheda across all manifestations, yet underlying all this Bheda, there is Abheda. So there is Advaita, there is non-duality, there is non-differences. So there is a common theme, that is the Brahman, that is the Atman, that is the Purusha, okay, which underlies all these things, right? So that is what the Nrsimha Avatara also says, right? So between all inanimate things, inside all inanimate things, what pervades is the divinity, right? That is what is highlighted here. Okay, the evolution from potency. So the evolution from potency, all activity proceeds from an inherent potency. So there should be a power. So whenever there is a manifestation, whenever there is a parinama, okay, whenever there is a transformation, there should be an energy, there should be a shakti to manifest. So so that is what the Newton law says, right? Laws of motion. So matter cannot stay in its own state, change its state unless there is a force acted upon it. This is one of the Newtonian laws, right? Okay, so for anything there needs to be a force or an energy acting on it. So that energy or shakti should be able to control the entire dynamics of manifestation. Okay, the parimana, the transformation. Okay, so Samkhya believes in Satkarya Vada, the Parinama Vada of Satkarya. That means whatever gets transformed continuously. Okay, while Vedanta tools talks about this transformation from a Vivarta Vada. So there is an apparent transformation. There is no real transformation. We will discuss about the differences between these two doctrines and how they synergize as we go along. But here, according to Samkhya, there is an eternal flux, eternal change, eternal transformation from being to becoming to becoming to being, right? That transformation needs energy. That energy is Shakti, and that is the Mola Prakriti or the Parasakti or Maheshwari or whatever name we give to it, right? So then there is an undividedness of dissolution, at dissolution. So all these Bheda finally envelops or wraps up into a singularity, what is called in singularity in modern cosmology. Okay, so the absolute singularity, where all differences breaks down into a pure energy, right? It is all equal to MC square. Whatever manifestations, at the end of the day, is a form of energy. So this is this reductive idea of how everything boils down to energy as both the least common multiple and the highest common factor, both the LCM and HCF of manifestation is what is. So end of the day, every difference collapses into a singularity when it on attaining what the so-called moksha or deliberation or what is the liberation. Okay, so far Purusha and Prakriti, the key differences is the Purusha so can be talked about from two aspects, the manifest aspect and the unmanifest aspect, okay, which is Vyaktatva and Avyaktatva. So the manifest aspect is comes under the category, I mean, attributes of it is caused, it is non-eternal, it is non-pervading, it is active, it is multiple, it is component based, okay. And it is mergent, it is conjunct, it is dependent, okay. So there are more, and then it is undergoes transformation, which is homogeneous transformation. Okay, and then there is a unmanifest principle. So the unmanifest principle takes that it is uncaused, it is eternal, it is pervading, all pervading, it is inactive, it is single, it is non-competent, I mean, it is non-componentized, and then it is unconjunct. Okay, conjunct means it is a limitation, unconjunct means it is unlimited, then it is independent, it is swatantriya. So okay, and then it is the original state, or the initial state, they call it in modern physics, right? So the initial conditions of it is that there is no uh, there is no heterogeneous. So that is what is highlighted here when we talk about homogeneous and transformation. So transformation and heterogeneous transformation. Okay, so there is, or in modern physics, what we call it as symmetry breaking. So when in a homogeneous state of unmanifest, there is no symmetry breaking yet. Only with symmetry breaking, which is the modern physicist talks how cosmology starts with the symmetry breaking. So only when there is a big bang of breaking that symmetry of from a singularity state of where all space and time are condensed into a singularity, non-dimensional singularity, or a zero-dimensional singularity, where everything is um, okay. So that is what is identified here. Okay, and the common features are it is tri-qualified, and it is insentient, objective. Okay, so coming to the puruṣa aspects, all these were talking about the prakṛti aspect, the manifest and the unmanifest side of the prakṛti aspect. The puruṣa aspect is the uncaused, the eternal, the pervading, the inactive, the multiple, the non-competent, the non-soluble, the unconjunct, the independent, the non-transforming, without qualities, distinguishable, sentient, subject, the subject aspect, the productive, and the particular and the particularized. Um, Okay, so again, this Purusha aspect itself has two subdivisions here. We will do a deep dive when we get there, which is the Jiva Atma and the Paramatma aspect, which is highlighted in the theistic schools of Samkhya when we get there. But as of now, the Purusha, these are the categorization as per Samkhya Karika. So the manifest is with cause, non-eternal, not pervasive, active, multiform, component-based, soluble, conjunct, and dependent. The unmanifest is the reverse of this. The manifest is with the three attributes or gunas. Okay, uh, undistinguishable or non-separative, objective, common, insentient, and productive. So also is the nature. The spirit is the reverse, and yet also in some respects similar. So this is what the Samkhya Karika verses 10 and 11 talk is explaining as per Sri Ishwar Krishnacharya. So this definition is based on Samkhya. Okay, so with this, I conclude today's session where we started discussing on the nomenclatures of these terms of both, starting with Sankhya, the term Sankhya, and how it means two things. One from an enumeration perspective, and then second from a deliberation perspective. Okay, so then we moved on to Puruṣa and Prakriti, related nomenclatures of their etymological derivations of how Puruṣa, Atma, Kshetrajna are all similar but terms, each highlighting certain aspects of the Tattva. Okay, and then we moved on to Prakriti, how Prakriti represents the primordial nature of creation uh, and the creation aspects. Okay, so far we have discussed all these concepts. In the subsequent session, we will start deep diving next into the unbound wedlock as an ontological dualism. Basically, how what was already highlighted in the Devi Bhagavata Mahapurana as how puruṣa prakṛti, this duality, the ontological duality, maintains a polarity principle. So of Shiva Shakti Tattva, okay, which is iconographically represented in Shaivism as the Ardhanarishwara Tattva. Okay, so in Chinese philosophy, as the yin and yang in Taoism, right? So like that, each of these schools have their own way of explaining. In Western modern science, it is wave particle duality. Uh, so nada and the bindu in concepts, right, or matter and energy, or soul and spirit or body, and so this polarity is what we will be discussing as an unbound wedlock, okay, in the next session. Okay, thanks for your patient listening, and I would request you to continue to support by this, because this takes a lot of effort. I want to outreach this to a larger audience, so I have taken some efforts in consolidating all these content and presenting so that it reaches a wider audience. Hope I have done some justice at least to this great this is an ocean. I have just picked some drops from that ocean, and I have tried to deliver based on my limited capacity of understanding and my deliberative skills. Okay, so please support it, subscribe to this channel, and share the content and like it, and also do share your constructive feedback, and both in terms of the content and the presentation style. I think there are issues there. Okay, so let's stay connected. See you in the next session. Until then, goodbye. Okay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Close the session now. Thanks, guys. Thanks for patient listening. Hope this is a useful session. Okay, please share your feedback. Okay, and do support it. Okay, sorry this session stretched a little longer, but I wanted to do justice in one shot on these related themes. Okay, so this is a much longer presentation. Where I'll try to cover it in later sessions. Okay, thanks again. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.